Peace, family. I'm Brother C.B. Powell, First Assistant President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, parent body. The Universal Negro Improvement Association is both an institution and a movement dedicated to the social, educational, economic, political, and cultural uplift of all peoples of African descent. Founded in 1914 by the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, we champion racial pride, self-reliance, and universal African nationalism. You've heard the famous quote of Mr. Garvey, "Up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will." Granted, the year is 2024, and we've heard plenty of variations of "say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," but let's focus in on the context upon which the statement, "Up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will," arises. Mr. Garvey lived in a time when black racial cowardice was considered good Christian moral virtue. You may find that this is still popular today. He lived in a time when the scramble for Africa was still in full swing. In fact, black subjugation was so normalized that the very notion that black as a race being mighty was considered the talk of an insane man. As a young man, Mr. Garvey was a publisher, journalist, orator, dock worker, trade unionist, a man of many trades really. And as he traveled by sea to places like Panama, Costa Rica, Honduras, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, London, and other European countries, he'd look out at the waters, and from the seas and oceans he would hear a haunting whisper asking him, "Where is the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his ambassador, his country, his men of big affairs?" Now, family, please remember to see this from Mr. Garvey's perspective and not in our 2020 hindsight. For certain, African national sovereignty has skyrocketed over the past 110 years. For example, we see Burkina Faso nationalizing their gold mining industry as recently as a few months ago under the leadership of Ibrahim Traore. But at the time, this was a question which went largely without answer. So as he would enter and exit different ports, as he waited for the ships to dock, as he traversed the oceans and seas, so persistent, so nagging were these whispers to Mr. Garvey's ears that he thought. Then a light bulb lit above his head and he said, "I know what I'll do. I will help to make them." Now, this eventually leads us to the conversation of self-reliance, but the point is that there is no racial self-reliance without racial self-esteem. In Mr. Garvey's own words, if you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you started. How do we arrive at this? Well, for a clearer path to the future, Mr. Garvey supported this crazy notion of racial pride by establishing it upon our true history as a people. In his own words, history is the landmark by which we are directed into the true course of life. The history of a movement, the history of a nation, the history of a race is the guidepost of that movement's destiny, that nation's destiny, that race's destiny. It's almost become a proverb that our history has been miseducated to us by those who sustain their dominance over us through our own ignorance of self, our own self-alienization. But knowledge is the key to open the door to ourselves, but a key merely opens a door, it doesn't walk you through the door. See, knowledge, even knowledge of self, without application is not movement, just as faith without works is dead. Mr. Garvey believed that true reform, true liberation requires action. Our knowledge of ourselves and our history eventually must be manifest in our environments. Knowledge merely reboots and upgrades our minds to notice the power that is already within ourselves, but action, it manifests that knowledge into this realm of flesh and blood and brick and mortar. It makes it real, tangible, quantifiable, measurable. So, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey knew that with racial pride that comes from the knowledge of self, we evolved from being products of our environments to now having the power to shift, almost terraform our environments. In fact, Mr. Garvey himself says that this is the day of racial activity, when each and every group of this great human family must exercise its own initiatives and influence in its own protection. Therefore, Negroes should be more determined today than they have ever been, because the mighty forces of the world are operating against non-organized groups of peoples who are not ambitious enough to protect their own interests. To have self-esteem as a race, racial pride, is to have self-reliance as a race, racial autonomy. But self-reliance is a daily initiative driven by action. So let's talk a little bit more about self-reliance.